How did you manage to stitch together all these experiences in this one life so far?
The responsibility is delivering the right product to the right customer at the right time. Suppose there's a target I want to meet. How will I predict how we make progress towards that target? Product doesn't ship, the CEO is fired, and the product manager will also get fired. The small difference is the CEO also has reporting authority over the others, which the product manager doesn't. People like Elon Musk or maybe even Sergey and Mark Zuckerberg, that whole math of product management, they are geeks.
Say there are many service companies like Infosys, Wipro,
Right.
So let's take an example of Infosys. So there is a person, say, with the name Manoj, who has been a product manager at Infosys, and now he wants to transition to a product-based company.
Beautiful. Now the designer is thinking, dude, I now have AI. I don't need the engineer. I don't need the product manager.
Welcome to Worldclass Tech Talent Show, my friends. And today we have an amazing guest, Vivek. Welcome, Vivek, to Worldclass Tech Talent Show.
Thank you so much, Vikas. Appreciate it.
Thanks again for being on our show. Just to give you a brief experience and journey of Vivek. Vivek Sundaram is having close to 25 years of corporate experience. And when we talk about the company, I think these are the dream companies of any software engineer. If I talk about Microsoft, Amazon, Google, LinkedIn, and Instagram, I'm sure you will agree. These are the dream companies of any software engineers. And Vivek has worked in these companies in product management space. He has a more than 17 years of working experience in Silicon Valley, lived in 3 continents, Africa, US, and Asia, which is India now, and offer product management consultancy to growth stage companies and also mentor product managers. He is also an ICF certified coach, TEDx speaker, and I think the introduction is endless. Vivek, I want to hear from you. How did you manage to stitch together all these experiences in this one life so far?
Thank you very much, Vikas, for that very glowing introduction. I think the way I look at it, right, the way I like to operate is to just go with whatever I feel called to in the moment. And I think also by nature, I'm somebody who has like a diverse set of interests. And after walking a path for a little bit, I'm like, udhar jaake dekhte hain. So that is the way I generally operate. So I wouldn't say it's by some intelligent design. It's just random perambulations and a collection of interesting stories. But it's been a fun experience.
It's been a fun experience, and I'm sure it has been. Now, the focus of this today's podcast is about the product management talent, because with all the recent changes that are happening in the industry, the role and the growth for product managers is exponential. But still, because it's not a well defined path, like to become a software engineer, one will suggest that you do engineering and you will get into it. But still, for product managers, there is not a well defined path. So how you can guide others that how they should move to product management, what broadly is product management, and how people can slowly and gradually transition to product management?
I can talk about this endlessly. Would you like me to start with a brief blurb and then maybe you can point me to the directions where we'd like to dive in?
Sure.
So, at its heart, right, I think about product management as the responsibility is delivering the right product to the right customer at the right time.
Okay.
So, the first thing to keep in mind is the product manager typically themselves is not actually doing user research or design or development or testing or sales or marketing or support or biz dev, but what they are doing is orchestrating all these various functions towards the goal of shipping the right product to the right customer at the right time. So the role is inherently a facilitatory role. Now, another very important distinction is most product managers don't have this team reporting to them, which means and yet they will often be held responsible to whether the right product was shipped to the right customer at the right time. So influence without authority, being able to take these very talented people in each of these professions and get them to work together as a team to achieve that outcome is where the magic lies.
Okay, so finding the right product delivered to the right customers within the right time, that becomes and form the foundation of product management. And again, another beautiful thing that you talked about is without having the power to actually work with these people, still how you can make these people work towards that common vision, right? Now, lately we have seen a lot of product management companies growing in India, which means the need for product managers are increasing just like that, right? Every company, especially the product company, is looking for a product manager role. But what exactly is the role? Like, do we have any standard path that one can follow to become a product manager, or how the path for a product manager should be?
Beautiful question. So, I think I'll answer this in two ways and tell me
Mm-hmm.
if it begins to triangulate on what you're looking for.
Yep.
In my journey at all these various companies, right? When you look at what are the capacities and skills one needs to build to be an effective product manager, during my time at Instagram, so at Facebook, when they used to hire product managers and grow product managers, they used to focus on three areas. The first area is what they used to call as product sense. So, really, product sense means, do I understand how human beings work? When they want to solve a particular problem, how do they go about it? When they see a product, what is intuitive to them? Am I able to, and the skills to do this are essentially curiosity and keen observation. What great product managers do is as they go about life, whenever they come across any product, they'll be like, as I'm experiencing this, what feels intuitive or natural? What could be improved? So, first, that observation in terms of how you relate to products, and eventually that observation in terms of how others, because as you'd imagine, my 9-year-old who uses his iPad like he was born with it is very different from my dad who's turning 85, right? So, product sense is, do you understand human beings? Do you understand what makes for an intuitive product? Okay. Think of this as the art of product management, the
Got it.
psychology of product management. A second part, which is distinctly different, is think of this as the math or the physics of product management. It used to be called execution. I think of it as analytical problem solving. So, analytical problem solving is, let's say, for example, there is a growth funnel. In these steps, where is the drop off happening? Suppose I have two hypotheses I want to test. How will I design an experiment? Suppose there's a target I want to meet. How will I predict how we make progress towards that target? So, this is the math of product management. And now, the third part, this is sometimes overlooked, but often the key, is what at Facebook we used to call leadership and drive, which is, like I told you, the most important part is influencing with no authority whatsoever. How do I talk to the engineer, the designer, the marketer, the salesperson, and the executive in terms that they understand, appeal to whatever their motivations and incentives are, and get everybody to do what will serve the goal of shipping the right product to the right customer at the right time? Now, I'll also, just so that this becomes more relatable, I'll give you some examples.
Sure.
There's this often thrown around term that the product manager is like the CEO of the product.
Yes.
This is a little true in that if the product doesn't ship, the CEO is fired and the product manager will also get fired. The small difference is the CEO also has reporting authority over the others, which the product manager doesn't. The reason I brought up this metaphor is when you look at those three things, product sense, analytical problem solving, and leadership and drive, any good product manager has to have basic capacity in all three, but often some people have something which comes natively to them. To give you examples which people will connect with, people like Steve Jobs, he lived and breathed product sense. People like Satya Nadella, it was never about him. He doesn't have all the skills, but he can connect with people. He understands what motivates people and how to get them to row in the same direction. People like Elon Musk, or maybe even Sergey and Mark Zuckerberg, that whole math of product management, they are geeks. So I would say the key is both cultivating self awareness. So, you know, which of those are your natural gifts? Often people have one or at most two. Cultivate them and also build some capacity in the others.
Great. So, if I want to summarize my understanding of what you just said, one, starting with the art, which is the product sense, it should start with as a product manager. The next skill is the science. You talked about the maths, that how the customer acquisition is happening, where they are dropping, the science behind it or the maths behind it. And third one, which is the leadership. So how you can work with different stakeholders in the who are related to the product, and how they can stitch together to work towards that common goal, right?
Well
So
summarized.
yes, so this is about how, what are the key skills required for our product manager. But now I'll ask a very I'm sure this is the one of the most curious question from the audience side. I want to apply for these dream companies that you have worked with as a product manager. And you must have interviewed many product managers during your time with those companies, right? Any one or two common mistakes that you see people doing when applying to these big companies that they can avoid, like that can increase their chance of getting recruited at these companies?
Okay, this is a beautiful question. So I'm hearing, suppose there is, let's say, Rashmi. If Rashmi is interested in, say, a product manager position at, let's say, Google,
Sure.
what are some common mistakes that candidates make to watch out for?
Yep.
So the first thing I would advise, so here's what I would say. In fact, this quote comes to me, which is, it says that the quote is, it says, happy families are mostly alike. Unhappy families are all unhappy in their own unique way. So rather than say, hey, here are the common mistakes, I'm going to answer it in terms of what are the important things to pay attention to, which if one does, they will have a smooth ride.
Yeah, that also answers my question.
The first thing is, I think, really understanding what is the product management role. I think we live in an age where there is so much information. First, there is a ton of superb content over there. I'll even mention a few. And second, you don't even know where the content is, because in this age of generative AI, if you go to ChatGPT and say, help me understand the landscape, what are the key skills? How does product management work at Facebook or Google? It will quite literally tell you.
Yeah.
So, my first invitation to Rashmi would be to do the work to understand what product management actually is. Because I would find a lot of people coming in who did not have a good understanding. They said, oh, I want to be a product manager because I don't want to be told what to do. I want to be telling people what to do. Or, oh, I don't want to get into the details. I just want to do this high level thinking. And these, firstly, are not at all representative of the role. So even if you were to get the job, you'd be very disappointed. And these are red flags to anybody looking to hire product managers, because often product management is, you are the person of last resort, which is, if there's nobody else doing the job, you're responsible for shipping the product. So it is your job to get the job done. And sometimes that means doing it because there is nobody else available to do it.
Okay.
Anyway, rewinding back to your question, understand the role. The second thing I would invite Rashmi to do is talk to product managers at these companies and the teams she's interviewing with to understand how product management works at that team and at that company. Because the other thing I've realized, I'm happy to talk about this if it's interesting, it works very differently at different companies and various teams depending on cultures. The third is essentially practice, because like there's this famous adage which is, you don't get promoted to a role when people are hoping you will perform. You get promoted to a role when you're already performing at that role.
Yeah.
So similarly, if you're going to get hired as a product manager, it helps if you're already performing. Now she might say, hey, I have a different role. It is not your role that matters, it is what you're doing. For example, for myself, when I made the switch from software engineer to product manager, I knew I wanted to make the switch. I got to know other PMs, found out what they were doing, and would find out how I could help them, save them time, and pick up some of those responsibilities. So then when I was interviewing, I had a bunch of artifacts to point to in terms of specs, designs, etc., which showed them that I had already done what a product manager would be expected to do. I could go on, but these are
Yeah.
some pointers I would offer.
And I think they are very helpful. First, to understand what is the actual meaning of product management, or why product management for me, that why I'm interested in doing that role, and then talking to people, which is connecting with the companies, the people in those companies where you want to apply, and understand from their perspective what they are doing and how they can get better understanding of their work. And last but not the least is to stitch them together and start doing that work. Just always don't remain in that wannabe, because wannabe may not be selected that well compared to the person who have done. So start doing some work in some capacity so that you can prove your metal, that okay, this is what I already know. Yeah, does that summarize, right?
It's a beautifully summarized, and that last point I think is worth
Yeah.
emphasizing, because it's not just for product management. For any new skill, there is the learn, try, and reflect, and don't over-index on any one of them. Spend some time learning, some time trying it out, and some time reflecting on what you have learned and what you have tried.
Okay. Now I would move to another question, which is slightly different. It is coming from my experience running Worldclass Tech Talent Recruitment Agency. Nowadays, with the transition happening with the advent of AI and many things, we see the IT service industry is transitioning into a product industry, right? So the size of IT services is shrinking. People who are performing roles like project manager, delivery manager, and many other roles which were relevant to the I should say IT services part of it, they want to move to product based companies, and one of the probably the role could be product management role. So any one or two advice for someone who has worked say for 15 years 20 years in a service based company, how they can transition to a product management role in a product based company? Any one or two quick tips for them?
Beautiful question. I think to make this even more helpful, let's maybe take a concrete
Yeah.
example. If they've been in a service company, like what service company have they been at and what have they been doing? If you could just construct a fictitious or real
So,
example.
say there are many service companies like Infosys, Wipro,
Right.
right? So, let's take an example of Infosys. So, there
Perfect.
is a person, say, with the name Manoj,
Mm.
who has been a product manager at Infosys, and now he wants to transition to a product based company or
Beautiful.
move to a product management role. So
Beautiful.
far, he has been, say, an engineer for initial 5-7 years, then transition to a tech lead and slowly move to a project management kind of role or a delivery management kind of role. Now they want to move to a product management role, product manager role in product based company.
Beautiful. So I'll answer this question and also a broader question, which I'll answer with this specific, but this answer is applicable to somebody in customer service or marketing or design or anyone who wants to switch to this role.
Sure.
What I would say is, hey Manoj, in your role right now, what are some opportunities where you can both demonstrate and deepen product sense, analytical problem solving, and leadership and drive? For
Okay.
example, if Manoj comes in and says, hey, there was this customer, this is what the customer thought they wanted. But in thoughtful interviewing, I discovered what was the real need underlying their request. And so I made sure that the team focused on what would meet the underlying need. And in the process, we delivered our project under budget and with better quality, right? That demonstrates that Manoj demonstrated product sense.
Got it.
Analytical problem solving. If he says, as we were thinking through it, there was this particular thing where there was not clarity on which approach to take. We experimented with these two approaches, learnt this from this quick experiment, and then move forward in that way. Or a third thing, while this team had hired us to do the job, our success was actually dependent on those other teams. I sensed this early, built the right relationships, find out what their incentives would be, and aligned it and made it work. So then he has demonstrated these three key capacities in whatever other role he was playing. So this would be my offering both to Manoj and also to that designer or customer, because everybody has opportunities where they can demonstrate those three capacities.
Great. So first is product sense, second is the analytical skill, and third being the leadership skill. So whatever role I am performing, I can start finding and focusing on these three first capacities, that how can I build that level of thinking for these three things, and then probably my product management interview, I'll be in a better position to answer. Instead of saying no, I have not been a product manager, we can start talking about the things that I've observed in my past experience, say as a project manager, that okay, this was the product and this was the product sense that I developed, and when I analytically observed it, this happened. So probably that can become my transitioning point.
Beautifully put, because remember, they're not interested in whether you were a product manager. They were like, have you demonstrated product management thinking in your previous roles? Your
Correct.
title is less important, and your accomplishments and the approach you took to them is what matters.
Great, great. Now, my next question would be the people who are already a product manager, and one common challenge that you see that, or one common mistake that they are doing it on a day-to-day basis, which you see that probably if they can stop doing that one mistake, say I may be at Microsoft, I'm a good product manager, but there is always room for growth, right? So what is that one thing that I should develop, if I, even though I am already a senior product manager or at that level, but still what can I do differently?
This is a fantastic question, and I'll also answer it with a real world story. So, there's this famous book about what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah,
This is true in many aspects of
yeah,
life. And I've probably even been guilty of falling for this trap early on. When you're a product manager and once you have learned these skills, at some point it can be intoxicating, because you are like this nerve center of information, and everyone from the CEO to the VP to the engineers to the tester, everybody comes to you in order to know kya karna chahiye, what should we do,
right,
right? And initially you're wielding this, making decisions, etc., which helps you as an individual contributor build a good feature.
true,
Now the trap is, suppose you were to disappear to Mauritius for a month, everything will collapse because you are the nerve center. So, the tip from good to great, so to speak, over here is, can you cultivate a little bit of product thinking in everyone else, so you're not making the decisions for them, but in a sense, coaching them or arming them with systems and processes to make the decisions themselves. And this also talks to a more general thing I learned from someone, which is, in any job, if you're continuously focusing on how can I make myself irrelevant, and I mean that from a very specific way, which is the things I'm doing, can they be better done by others or better done by systems, because then this frees up my time to focus on even higher leverage activities. That, I would say, is a very common trap many PMs fall into, which is worth paying attention to.
great. So naturally, as the role expect that they become the center point, but becoming the center hub also creates a problem of that too much dependency on that person. So how that person himself or herself can start decentralizing that kind of nature, that it's not that everything is dependent on him, and he or she is creating more leaders that others can create a self-sustaining system, right?
Beautiful. And you also reminded me, I told you I'll give you the real world example. This is very powerful. So there was this guy called Peter Martinazzi at Facebook. Okay. He was a legendary PM. So he was one of the few people who grew as an individual contributor up to the PM director level. He had no reports. So the specific story is, every time they ran an experiment in growth, there used to be tremendous value in capturing, this was the specific problem or opportunity, this was the hypothesis, this was the experiment, this is what we deployed, and this is what we learned. So many initial PMs would like to write this report themselves, publish it, and like fame as it gets likes and comments. What this guy would do is, he'd say, hey, engineer who launched this, I'd like to get you to write it. And initially, engineers were like, dude, I'd rather write code than write. He was like, no worries, I will draft it for you, and then you can refine it in your own words and post it. So what this did, and I saw this happen, which is, there were engineers where initially Peter would almost ghostwrite it for them, and then they would post it. And when it got all these likes and comments, they realized the value of capturing that. So they started writing themselves. So in this way, he was not writing up the results of their work and like capturing their glory, instead helping them to do it themselves and cultivating that set of leaders. What that means is, while most product managers might be confined to working with 5 or 6 engineers because they would be doing this work for them, he was able to work with 25 different engineers because each of them had a little product manager streak in them.
That's a nice way of explaining how that independent system can be built with your mentorship, I should say, right? And Vivek, you have a working experience in different continents, right? And especially a long tenure in US, and now you being in India. Do you see is there any difference between the product manager who is working at, say, in US to India, and pros and cons, like what we can learn from them or how we can grow?
Definitely, this is a beautiful question. So I'll caveat just this with one thing, which is my direct product management work experience has been in Seattle and in Mountain View. So in the US, I did work with a lot of engineering teams in India. So I have some sense of how that contributes.
Yeah.
And I also have many friends who actually done it at both. So I have
Sure.
quite a bit of visibility into the difference. So I think one main thing, right, and this is a cultural thing, you guys might have observed it. Like in the US, when say an electrician, right, he comes and tells you, hey, this will take approximately this time and this is what it'll cost, you can place a reasonably high degree of trust in that estimate. Also, there's not usually this fear of delivering bad news. If it's going to be delayed and you were expecting it tomorrow but it's going to be 2 weeks, he will tell you as soon as he knows. Having spent time in both countries, I've noticed that in India it's a little different. Most people don't like delivering bad news. So they'll say, haha, sab ho jayega. It's very likely that they know there's no chance of it happening, but they're not comfortable delivering the truth. Without going too much into that story, tying this back to your question,
Yeah.
right? What this also means is that engineers, for example, you work with sometimes need a little bit more hand holding and all of that in India than over there. And I think the best thing I've seen about some of the best PMs I've worked with is this ability to adapt. If some junior engineer needs hand holding, they are available to initially provide the hand holding. If some senior engineering mostly does not need a PM except for interference management, they're happy to let them go because they're essentially saving them time. So that ability to adapt to what the team needs in the moment is the key. But coming back to your specific question on
Yeah.
differences, I think in terms of just level of responsibility, comfort with delivering bad news, taking responsibility for deadlines, there's a slight difference between the culture over there where if you are not meeting these, you will not have a job very soon, versus here where it's almost built into the thing that yes, you need a level of follow up. And this is
Okay.
just the one last thing I'll say is
Yeah.
also speaking to a lot of people who made the transition from there to here, those who came in with eyes wide open, knowing that, hey, this is how it would work here, and were prepared for that, were able to adapt, even though, of course, it's a little bit of a shock.
Yeah.
While those who thought that, oh, Google there, Google here, it's all the same, were surprised.
Got it. So I think the summarizing thing would be having better estimation, which can be a professional behavior or a professional attitude, that we can give better estimate, and when things are not working as expected, you are the first one to deliver the bad news or just convey it that, okay, what is the next probable estimation, instead of
Right.
just keeping with that attitude of ho jayega type.
Estimates is definitely a part. I think I would say taking agency and responsibility,
Okay.
those two things.
Okay, got it, got it. Now a follow-up question, as we are talking about the different behaviors of working experience of in US and India, with whatever is happening globally, and there are many things, right? Not to talk about the podcast, that not the main focus of the podcast. Lot many professionals, senior professional with 15 years of experience, 20 years of experience are coming back to India, right? And now they are finding a job. Definitely the pay cuts they are already aware of, but still finding a job in India once they on a daily basis hearing the news of that this company fired these many people, right? So any one or two tips that can work better for these people who are moving from US to India, and how they can get work in India quicker?
So let's take a concrete example.
Yeah.
Let's say a person, let's call them Akash,
Sure.
moved from America to India, right?
Yeah.
The first thing I would invite Akash to do is this is an opportunity because these big transitions don't happen often. Take a little bit of time and come well planned so you give yourself a little bit of cushion to think about what is it that you really want to do. Do you even want to work for a company or do you want to strike out on your own? This is one thing. And when I say strike out on your own, people say, oh, I don't have the risk appetite for that. I'm not even saying big, fancy, venture funded startup. Especially in this age of AI, there's so many people, even in my direct network, who are essentially freelancers, consultants doing product management, marketing, or other things where they're working for themselves and not working for others, but with others doing interesting things. Okay. So just double clicking a little bit into what is it that I value. Some people enjoy working for themselves, some people enjoy the structure that comes with a big company. Then after that, I would say there are, I'll give you again a specific example. There was
Sure.
this friend of mine in Bangalore. So he was looking for a CTO role. So he went about it, a sales professional, the way they would. He started with looking at all the companies over there. Let me construct this list of 100 tech companies in India which seem to have a very good outlook. Let me now study these in terms of domain, the people working over there and the CEOs, and decide which are the ones I'm interested in. Let me then cultivate relationships, talk to people at those companies to better understand what it is like to work over there. And then he eventually zeroed in. So I think taking this approach of if I was a salesperson and I have to close this one sale, the sale is what company am I going to sell my time to?
Yep.
Start with the leads, cultivate them, nurture them, and then go on to close them is one invitation I would offer to our metaphorical Akash.
Great. And I'm sure there are many Akashes and Akashvanis right now who are looking for that kind of transition. And it is very interesting to see that the common process of marketing or the sales can be applied here as well. That you have leads, so find a list of 100 companies, figure out that what match best with your current experience and where you have a high chances of going through all those possibilities and start talking to them.
Beautiful. And in fact, this reminds me of one other thing. When I think about product management, right, there's these two aspects, which is one is make things people want. Because if you don't make things people want, you're not going to succeed.
Yeah.
But there's a critical second aspect, which is make people want things because people don't frequently know what they want. And the reason I was reminded of it in this context is even when you're thinking of yourself as getting a new job, I am a product. I'm a product manager who's a product,
Right.
and I want to get this to the right customer at the right time. So invest in yourself, deepen your capacity in product sense, analytical problem solving, and leadership. This thing, and learn to tell the right stories. Connect what you have with what is it that they seek. Understand those companies, their aspirations, study their product, what's going well, what's not going well, what you would do in their place. The more you show that you have put time into genuinely understanding them, easier to build a connection.
Great. And probably a time of self promotion. I would have thought that you would have said WTT hai na. You should
WTT hai na.
So you can come to worldclasstechtalent.com, create your profile, and our recruitment agency can help them find the job.
How amazing. That is such amazing work you guys are up to.
Great. Now, probably it's a very national level question that India has mastered the art of IT services development in last 2 decades, right? But now with the transition happening to product-based companies, any thought at the national level, probably government or any big inputs that you can advise to the people who are watching the show that how India can move from a service to a product nation now?
This is a good question. So, first, I would call out the places where this is already happening, right? That is the first thing I'll call out. I'll come to it
Yeah.
in a second. And the second is how you can stitch it together. Again,
Yeah.
both with concrete examples. Take, for example, Swiggy, Zomato, or this new Swish startup which is coming up, right? Having spent a reasonable amount of time in the US and over here, comparing, say, DoorDash and Uber Eats to Swiggy and Zomato, these things come to mind. First, the cost. Swiggy and Zomato are around 10x cheaper. They give you around 10x more variety. The speed of delivery is around 10x faster, and the quality of food is around 10x better. So this is almost a 10,000x differential in value.
True.
Okay, and this is so where India tends to excel right now is startups like this, where it is a product, even the user experience of Swiggy, Zomato, etc., the sophistication, because India is a complex market. Everything from where to deliver, yes, cutlery or not, the amount of complexity built reasonably well, the quality of user experience in these apps in India blows my mind. Now, I'll give you a second very concrete, funny example. So, there was a time when I was just looking up an address for my school teacher. I was going to go visit her. No broker had SEO'd that address. It came up with a link. I just clicked on it. It said, "Oh, are you interested in places like this?" I was like, "Sure." Click, click. 10 seconds later, my phone goes off, and somebody from No Broker is calling me asking if I want to. Now, this particular thing was a little bit annoying, but that's not the point. In India, because we have access to so much well educated human capital, that kind of user experience of having a human being call you immediately is not something that Redfin and all those companies in the US can even begin to imagine as a way to do it. So, both products and services help people solve problems and lead meaningful lives. And I think India, if it can bring these together, can first, of course, we have a market of 1.4 billion people to play with, like approaching, what is it, 20% or little less of the world's population. And I honestly think for everything from, say, Third Wave to Swiggy to Zomato to a lot of these product companies, I'm looking forward to the time when it's not just that we have Starbucks over here, but we have these companies penetrating not just Southeast Asia, not just the Middle East, but also Europe and North America. I think it's only a question of time.
It's only a question of time, and as you said, we are already doing it in some manner. Probably we just need to expedite the process, right?
And bring more attention
And
to it,
bring
right?
more
Almost
attention.
look at what is working and double down on doing more of it.
Great, great. And towards the last question, I think anything is not complete without discussing this, which is AI. So, with the things that are happening in the tech world with AI coming, how do you see the product management role changing? Probably there are 2, 3 dimensions to it. I'll just quote them and you can pick any one of them as per your choice or all of them. So, first is product managers using AI to improve their work. That is first. Second is designing and developing AI powered products. So, in my current product, what is the feature that I can think which can be AI powered, which can bring more value to the users, right? And third, with the way industry is changing, like large companies are firing so many people, right? Probably there will be smaller companies, 2, 3 people developing a magnificent product, right? How the role of product manager is changing with these 2, 3 dimensions with the in the AI world?
This is a phenomenal question. I think we could record an entire podcast on it, but I'll give you a crispish answer. So, first, I'll also make a plug for, I think, two resources which will be very helpful to your audience. First,
Yeah.
there's this podcaster called Lenny, who has this podcast primarily on product management, but really on entrepreneurship. And a particular episode, he interviews Mark Andreessen, who's a fabled venture capitalist and also the creator of the first web browser. The topic of that podcast episode is the AI revolution is just getting started. So over there, Mark Andreessen recounts this very interesting story. He says there is the engineer, the designer, and the product manager. Now the designer is thinking, dude, I now have AI. I don't need the engineer. I don't need the product manager. The engineer is thinking, I now have AI. I don't really need the designer or the product manager. The product manager is thinking, AI hai yaar, don't need designer and engineer. And here's the funny part. He says what none of them are aware of is the manager is thinking, I have AI, I don't need a designer or an engineer or a product manager. While it's a little funny,
Yeah.
so the other thing he talks about in that episode, right? Mark Andreessen, being a legit hacker, has a lot of friends who are very talented programmers. So he says 1 year ago, none of them believed that AI could code better than them. Now, many of them have experienced that given certain constraints, AI can in fact code better than them. So their job has become orchestrating coding bots. This is one thing.
Okay.
The other story, he said, the term calculator apparently used to refer to human beings. Like there was a room of people who would perform complex calculations where I'll be like, you do this part, you do this part.
Okay.
Eventually, machines got better at it. So the term calculator applied to those machines. So, A, for product management, but really for every profession, the quote goes, AI will not take your job. Someone using AI likely will, but you can be that someone if you learn to use those tools. Just like the guy who used to carry a pedestal on which people would, when horses came along, the, some of them learned to ride a horse. When cars came along, they learned to ride a car. The need of people to be transported from place A to place B will always exist. The tools you use to do that are going to change across time. So that quote, which is, it's not the strongest or the fastest or the bravest of the species that survives, but the one that is most adaptable to change.
Great. So product manager also is part of that same human civilization. So they needs to be adaptable, right? That answers the first part. Second, how they can bring out developing more AI powered application, because nowadays it's a pressure from the CEOs or the founders that anything will not sell unless it says that it is AI powered or there is some AI feature.
Right.
So how to build that capacity where they can develop products which are now AI powered products?
Beautiful question. So over here, right, first I would say is start using them yourselves. And for example, speaking for myself, right, I use ChatGPT extensively for everything. It is probably my most valuable subscription, maybe close to my YouTube subscription. And even YouTube, I could get it with some annoying ads. So the kinds of use cases I'll use it for, there was a time when I was traveling on a bus and I was just like, hey, this is where I'm going to get down. Is this the right stop? I spoke to ChatGPT, said, this is the bus I'm on. This is where I'm headed. This is where I'm getting off. Is there a better way? It said, no, Vivek, don't get off there. Wait till the very last stop. And then where you want to go is a 10-minute ride away. The point I'm trying to get to is that these kinds of things, right? The perfect metaphor I use for it is this, which is, suppose I was Tim Cook and I'm running Apple. Now, I have a team of research assistants who can go and research things for me and communication assistants who can draft communiques. I decide who to communicate what to in what way, but these people are experts in research and communication, so I deploy them. With ChatGPT, all of us have access to an infinite set of such research assistants and communication assistants. So if you're thinking about your product, AI is building a new way for people to engage with your product in a conversational way. The one key thing to pay attention to is there are some things where this works and there are some things where it does not work at all. And being able to experiment wildly and seeing how it does or not is where I think a lot of the magic lies.
And the magic could start with, as you mentioned about ChatGPT, that giving ChatGPT understanding of your product and just ask that in my product how AI can be induced.
100%. You hit upon a superb question. Ask AI on, dude, you guys are taking over the world. How should I survive in your world? Which brings me to this funny thing. One friend of mine told me, be nice to ChatGPT and Claude, because when the bots take over the world, they will remember how you talked to them.
That's a great closing remark, that be nice to them, because you never know what will happen in the future, right? Now, just the last thing, that how viewers can talk to you and for what your product management offerings and your coaching offering, like what do you offer and how they can get in touch with you?
Definitely. So I'll first answer the second question. Best way to get in touch with me is find me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is, you can link it, you can include it in the description to this. Yes. And I think I also have a link to where you can even WhatsApp me directly or send me a message on LinkedIn.
Sure.
Now, in terms of the second thing, in terms of how I can be helpful, right? I'll tell you a little bit of who are the people I work with a lot. I'm happy to help anyone. If you feel I'll be able to help in any capacity, please feel free to reach out. I welcome that. But specifically, if you're interested in product management, either because you want to break into the field, or you're a new or experienced product manager who wants to go deeper into that field, or you're an entrepreneur who wants to either get to product market fit or scale your product or look at monetization, then I'm happy to share with you what I've learned from my experiences and point you to other resources. And now, one second thing I have to offer is in my second innings, so to speak, I'm also a trained coach in the ICF way and a facilitator in the IAF way. So, also happy to bring that to either you as an individual or your teams to help you guys chase meaningful outcomes which are important to you.
Great. So, whether as a product or as a human being, if you need help, any help, they can get in touch with you.
100%.
I think it was wonderful talking, Vivek. I'm sure our audience have got really actionable insights there, how they can understand and go deeper into product management role, achieve desired success. Because I think for a career without boundary also gives an opportunity, because it's not having that foundation that, oh, you haven't done that course, you can't be here. Product management is not having that boundary, so which gives us actually the opportunity that you can be there if you have the right set of qualities that you talked about. So thanks, Vivek. Thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks again. Bye bye. And for our viewers, you remember World Class Tech Talent is all about WTT HANA, which means we have something. If you have any concern about the IT job ka tension, you always remember this word of input from our side, WTT HANA. You can go to our website, you can go download our app, find these useful podcasts, useful information on the app, and fill up your profile. So we have a recruitment agency, as in when we have a matching requirement, we can get in touch with you. Thanks again, and look out for our next episode on World Class Tech Talent Show. Bye-bye.